Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. The football team is off for spring practice today, so we'll be back tomorrow. Okay, we'll have some more coverage on all of what's going on tomorrow, and all the news and notes from that way. It also sounds like we're going to be having our first scrimmage next Wednesday, so that's going to be big. Obviously, we want to see how these guys look with the pads on. I don't know if we throw the pads on tomorrow or not, but I think that we do. Usually, you take I wanted to say like maybe like a week or two without the pads on, but I know spring practice is a little bit different. So hopefully those pads will be coming on. If we're going to be scrimmaging on Wednesday of next week, then we probably have got to start throwing those pads on here pretty quickly. So that's going to be big, but we've got your football fix in this video as well. We'll talk about a few things that I think are going to be very important to us moving forward. And also, we're going to be talking a little bit of baseball, and clearly we're in the NCAA tournament. We've got a big time game tomorrow. I don't care who it's against. It's the first game of the NCAA tournament. We all know about the talk with Rick Barnes, in March, and how he kind of fails. And I think that this year we can get over the hump. I think that we will get over that hump. We'll talk about all that in this video, but please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so first and foremost, I saw this little nugget last night that Kaden Proctor, who was a five-star, 6'7", 360-pound offensive tackle from Alabama, who transfers to Iowa, is planning on hitting that transfer portal at the end of spring. So a lot of people are saying he's going to be going back to Alabama. But I think that this could be, really big news. Number one, as an offensive tackle, he was number one in the entire country in his class. And that just speaks to what the ceiling is for him as a player. So I don't know why Kaden Proctor would have left, from Alabama to go to Iowa. Now, he is from Iowa, so that would make some sense. I don't know if he got upset with the staff. I think that he actually was planning on leaving before Coach Saban retired, and I could be off on that. Maybe he left because Saban was leaving. And, if he ends up going back, I mean, that would just look pretty foolish on his part. It sounds like he's got some kind of like off the field types of issues going on. If you're going to make a decision that quickly and just come right back to the same school that you started with. Now, I don't know how true those rumors are that he's going back to Alabama. He might be wanting to go somewhere else. And if he is, I'm going to tell you this, man, our entire staff, somebody on our staff anyway, is going to be looking into this. They're going to say, hey, man, what's going on with Kaden? And they're going to gauge his level of interest. Now, I don't think that he could play tackle in our system, but if you bring him in at the left guard position where we've got a lot of, issues, or maybe not a lot of issues, but we are trying to find that starting left guard, he will be plug and play there. I think he's more of a guard anyway. I mean, he's huge and he's got pretty decent footwork, but, I think that as a tackle, he would have to lose, I mean, somewhere around 30 to 40 pounds and have to go through a whole lot of work to be a real tackle. Now, would he want to come and play in a system that's as up tempo as ours is, especially being 365? Probably not. But again, I definitely think that it's worth trying. It's worth just gauging what his interest level is, because that right there, I mean, you add him into what is already a veteran, very strong offensive line. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking about, I mean, just being absolutely unstoppable, because I still really like the pieces that we could potentially have over there at left guard, and we would just have so much depth on this offensive line if he came in. But this also got me to thinking about, who do we have right now, just off of the first couple of days of spring practice, that I feel like could potentially also be heading into that portal after spring. And we'll start off with the wide receiver group, because that's a pretty deep group on this team. And Nathan Leacock is going to be one that for sure you would have to anticipate that he's probably going to be testing those waters some, and it's not necessarily any fault of his own. He can't participate in spring practice this season, and it's big because we've got so many very good players inside of that room. He may look at it and say, hey, I don't know if I can get into the rotation or get into the mix this year. I mean, he was a 4-star. Some people thought that he was a 5-star. I thought that he was a 5-star caliber player for sure, and I still think that he just has to be consistent and get himself healthy. I hope that that doesn't happen, but if we're talking about guys that could potentially be leaving, I would say he would have to be number one on the list. And I'm also going to throw in Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, and Nate Spillman. Now, Nate Spillman is the older brother of Edwin Spillman, who just got on campus. I think he's probably going to stay put because his brother is here. He's going to try to find a way to get on the field. I don't know if that happens this season, but you never know. We're still very early in this whole process. Caleb Webb looks really good. He looks like a guy that can start somewhere in the SEC. But if he did decide to transfer, he would have to transfer outside of the SEC. And I think that he could do it. Chaz Nimrod same exact deal, right? I mean, he's a very, I wouldn't say that he's a very dynamic player, but he has the capability of being that. So we'll keep a close eye out on it. Obviously, I'm going to be paying attention to what the insiders have to say about it because they would know a lot better than I would. I'm not on campus. Now, the next group is going to be at linebacker, and I'm going to talk about Caleb Perry and Elijah Herring. Now, we all know that Elijah Herring is not going to be participating in spring practice this season, and that's big because we've got an influx of great young talent coming into that room. And then, there's a new linebackers coach. He may see the writing on the wall and say, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to play this season. But his younger brother, okay, is on this roster as well in Caleb Herring. So maybe he does stay, hopefully he does stay. I think that there's a place for him on this team. And, hopefully with Coach Inge coming into the program now, he can find a way to explain things to him in a way that he will receive a little bit better. But also Caleb Perry, who's a guy that, we talked about this yesterday. He's number one on the depth chart right now, starting right there next to Keenan Pili. But I don't think that that's going to last by any means. He's a really good athlete, but I just didn't like what he put on film last year. Now, once those pads come on, we keep on saying this, but it's so true. Once those pads come on, there's a different level of separation. And I think that that's when the depth charts will kind of start to get switched around. And I know after that first scrimmage, it's definitely going to look a lot different as far as, what the, first, second, and third groups are. And I just don't see Caleb Perry even making it into that second group. He's, I think he might kind of be fighting for a spot in that third group as far as getting onto the playing field. So those are two more guys that I, would say definitely look out for as potentially looking for another place to play at after spring. Now, we'll go on to the secondary because there's several players here, okay, that I think that may want to test the waters in a different conference if they're not seeing enough playing time. And we'll start off with Christian Conyer, who is a sophomore cornerback. He's got great length, and I think that he really has come along a lot with this team since last season. I haven't seen him play very much here, recently since spring started or anything like that. But from what I saw last year, I liked what he was doing out there, and I think that he can find a good landing spot if he does decide to leave. Can he work himself into some sort of a rotation? And this is something that we've talked about so much with Coach Martinez. Hey, man, you've got to find a way to get more secondary guys out on the field. Now, Coach Martinez primarily is coaching cornerbacks, and Coach Tim Banks is coaching the safeties. I don't know who coaches the star position. It's probably some sort of a mix of both. Usually, whenever I see those star players going, they're with those safeties. And speaking of star, okay, we can talk about Christian Harrison, who has bumped around everywhere, okay, from safety to corner to star to, I mean, literally everywhere in that secondary, he's been playing there. So I like him a lot more at star. That's where it sounds like he was playing at more in our practice yesterday. And we've got to find a way to get him out on the field. He's a really good talent, and, we don't want to lose anyone. I told y'all yesterday, I feel like he's a guy that could be number two right there behind Jordan Thomas at the star position. So hopefully we can find a way just to keep everyone that I'm talking about right now, happy and make them feel like they are included in our game plan and give them something to fight for, give them something to keep them engaged with this team. That's going to be very important. Now, also at safety, we could talk about John Slaughter. And John Slaughter, who is just going to be a sophomore, but he came into play. I believe he was a four-star coming out of high school. At least that's about what I had him rated at personally. He's a really good player. He can pretty much do it all. Okay. Now he could also play star. I don't think that they would move him there, but he's good in coverage. He loves to come up and hit. He's physical. And his battle is going to be between it's going to be between him and Andre Turntine. And I think that whoever doesn't maybe start at that position could end up leaving. Now, everyone could stay. I'm just purely speculating, but you just never know with these kids, right? Like they're young, 18 to early 20s. And with how the transfer portal is set up, NIL is set up, they could even go to a lower classification and end up getting more playing time, getting more NIL money, and they could still end up having an opportunity to go on to the league. So we'll keep a close eye out on all of that stuff, but let's go ahead and switch gears to baseball. All right, now we all know that our baseball team just went down to Tuscaloosa to kick off SEC play versus Alabama. We went into that series ranked number 5 in the country, and now we're ranked number 8 because we lost the final 2 games of that series, but we did win the first one 11-3. The second game we lost 3-6. I watched both of those games. I wasn't able to watch the third one, but we lost 6-7 in that one, and it sounds like we just didn't finish the way that Coach V wanted us to. Now, on down to Xavier, we just played them on Tuesday. We won that game 10-2, And now we're going to have Ole Miss coming on up to Knoxville, starting off on Friday at 6:30. And Ole Miss is ranked outside of the top 25 in baseball nationally, so we should be able to win this series. We definitely need to get things going, right? We all know the baseball is very streaky, and I am a little bit concerned just early on with some of our pitching, right? I like the fact that our guys do, for the most part, finish strong. Like I can tell you in game 2 versus Alabama, okay, we didn't start off pitching that great, but we finished strong. So that's a really good sign. And it's such a long season that you just want to see those little things. I feel like early on, showing that your team will continue to fight and scratch back into the games, as need be, right? So we've got a whole lot of SEC games coming up here, and we'll keep y'all covered on all of that. We'll probably have some more in-depth coverage as we kind of get through with spring practice and also once March Madness ends. But let's go ahead and flip the switch to our big matchup versus St. Peter's. And this right here is actually from my personal bracket. I don't know about y'all, but my bracket right now looks a little bit crazy, especially towards the end. I got a whole lot of madness happening. So hopefully everything that I picked will play out the way that I have it slotted. But right here, okay, Tennessee versus St. Peter's. I actually like this breakdown here because it gives you a good overview of everything. So we are the 96% users pick, and St. Peter's is 4% users pick. I don't know who will be picking them, but they're probably lost their minds. So we are ranked number 7th in the net ranking, and they're ranked 188th. We are 6-4 versus top 25 opponents. They haven't played up against anybody. So the level of competition that both teams have faced is just not even on the same page by any means. And our strength of schedule, as you can see right here, is 5th versus their 240th. We're averaging about 80 points per game, whereas they're averaging about 65 points per game. And we are limiting our opponents to about 68 points per game, where they're limiting theirs to about 63. Now on down to the last 10 games. We're 7-3, they're 8-2. Again, keep in mind the strength of schedule difference. And then the team statistics, we're shooting at about 44%, and they shoot at about 40%. So that's pretty shocking to know that they're playing up against a lower level of competition and they're not even shooting as well as Tennessee does. I know that I haven't seen a defense like Tennessee's all season, probably in offense either for that matter. Now we're shooting 34% from three. They're shooting at about 33%. We're winning in that category as well. Now we're also beating them in free throws. We're at about 75%, whereas they're at about 71%. That's interesting because I don't think that we shoot free throws that great. But the more that I've looked at, a whole lot of these different teams, the more I'm seeing no one really shoots free throws that great. There might be a couple of teams, but for the most part, it's around mid 70s. So we already know about our key player in DK. I hope that he comes out hot and that he balls. Their key player is Corey Washington. He's averaging 16.5 points per game, 6.6 rebounds, and he's getting about 28 minutes per game. Now let's take a look at their entire team, okay? Just from like a top to bottom 50-foot view. So number one, Corey Washington, who's their key player, he's a forward. He's only 6'6", right? And we kind of already talked about what his stats look like. Let's see what else they've got out here because I like to look at the sizes. I think that's important with these matchups. So we've got Latrell Reed, who is number 0. He's a guard, 6'3". He's a senior. He's the second leading scorer with 11.1 per game. Also has 4.5 rebounds and 4.5 assists. We can see how he's doing from the field, 38% and 33% from three. So he's a pretty good scorer, but nothing I would say to write home about by any means. Then we've got Michael Haug or Hugh or Hoagie. I'm not quite sure how to say his last name, but he's a 6'7" guard. He's averaging 8.5 points per game. He does not shoot the three ball well. We talked about this. We need to, not close out on guys, okay, on the outside. They can't shoot threes. Make them prove that they can hit those shots. I think that's going to be important throughout the entire tournament. Now, we've also got Roy Clark, who's a guard as well. He's number 4, 6'4", 210 pounds, averaging 7 points per game, 3 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and he's only shooting 31% from the field and 33% from three. He's another one that, I would say, yeah, close out on him from three, but, you don't have to worry about him too much. Now, Marcus Randolph, who is 6'5", he's a guard as well. He's number 2. He's one of their more dynamic scorers. He shoots 42% from three and 39, almost 40% from the field. So I would say out of all the players, out of all the guards, he's the one that we probably want to pay the most attention to. He's only getting 22 minutes a game. Now let's see who else they have down here. This one right here is going to be really important. This is going to be one of the big storylines. I'm sure that y'all have heard about it. Armani Ziegler, who is actually Zakai Ziegler's younger brother. I think that they're half brothers. And, he is 6'4". So if ZZ was 6'4", he would be one of the best players in the entire league, if not the best. But that's just how the ball bounces sometimes. So he's averaging about 6.4 points per game and 2 rebounds. He's actually a really good shooter, shooting at 37, almost 38% from three and 39% from the field. He's a guy that ZZ kind of joked about saying, hey, man, Santi's going to have to guard him because I can't. He's too tall for me. But it'll be interesting to see how that matchup goes. I do think that at some point ZZ will get matched up on. We know how that goes with basketball. Now, we've also got Brent Bland, who's 6'3". He's another guard. He's number one, averaging 5 points per game. He's only getting about 21 minutes. And I mean, his shooting percentages are just absolutely terrible, but he shoots pretty good free throws. So he's a guy that we just, don't want to foul him. Okay. Just play some good, tough defense against him, and we should be fine. And the last guy is going to be Steven Roberts, who is 6'10". He's a forward as well. He's a senior. And I mean, he doesn't play that much. He's also, not that dynamic of a scorer, but he would probably be the only guy in terms of length that could give us any type of trouble. I also think that he's a little thin. So we should be fine there. I mean, overall, this is a matchup that I feel like Tennessee should definitely dominate in. Nothing to worry about too much. Now, let's take a big picture look at how our region looks. Okay. In the Midwest, I think it's probably the easiest. It's probably the weakest. Maybe it's right there neck and neck with the West. I still kind of feel like our region is weaker than the West. So we talked about the storyline with ZZ's brother in our first matchup. I think that the next matchup is going to be another storyline versus Texas, which is Rick Barnes' old team. How is that going to play out? How is he going to be able to coach versus his old team? I think that he's going to come out and coach very well. And I know that the players will get up for that one. So that's about how I have it playing out more than likely. Now, we could also see Colorado State, and I don't know if there's any storylines in that game, but either way, I have Tennessee advancing past these first 2 rounds. I think that we should be able to do that pretty easily. Now, as far as who's left up here, you're looking at South Carolina, Oregon, Creighton, and Akron. Who do I want to see? Who don't I want to see? Well, number one, South Carolina and Creighton. If they could both lose, I think that really increases Tennessee's odds to make it further into the tournament. And there's not a whole lot, I guess, that I'm scared of with South Carolina. We just play them so much that I kind of just don't want to see them again. That's something that I don't know. It just gives me a little bit of anxiety. It makes me just a little anxious thinking about having to play up against SEC teams, especially early on. So Creighton, okay, we talked a whole lot about them. They're a team that I think poses some big problems, some big, mismatch problems, some style of play problems versus Tennessee. Now, if we can have a guy like Santi, who I think he's probably the real key factor to all of this. If everyone does what they've been doing, even here recently, if Santi can step up and give us 8 to 10 points, if he can start shooting more consistently, if he can shoot with confidence, then that right there will, I think, we can end up winning the whole thing. He is the key piece. Now, I've heard guys like Swain say, "Hey, man, look, we need to go ahead and put Meshack in, okay, and we need to bench Santi, let him come off of the bench. He can maintain his minutes, all that good stuff." I actually agree with it. I think that would make a lot of sense. If we're gonna do it, we have to do it in that first game. I don't know too much about Akron, but I've seen some things just in looking at some of their stats and stuff like that that does kind of give me some cause for concern on a very, very small level. They look like they're a pretty good shooting team, but we'll see if we ever end up having to play versus them. But again, y'all, all in all, I really like our chances to be able to win out of this region. It's going to be up to who's going to be starting, right? What's the starting lineup look tomorrow night at about 9:30? Will it be Santi or will it be Meshack? That's going to be a very critical decision because can Santi handle what I guess could be sort of a mental thing, right? Like you have already been asked to take a step back from DK, and it doesn't look like that really played out well for Santi. He just doesn't look like he's very confident by any means. If we tell him, "Hey, you're going to be coming off of the bench," will that kill his confidence? Man, it's going to be tough, and I don't know. But this is something that Rick Barnes, this is why he is the head coach, and I know that the rest of the staff is going to help him decide on what to do here. But I think that this team can definitely win the entire thing. But if we can get Santi doing what he is supposed to do, if he gets confident, if he starts hitting shots, then watch out, man. I don't see anybody that can stop us throughout the entire tournament. But that's it for this video. We may have something coming up here later on tonight. I might have Bray on here with me to kind of break down some of these other matchups, and we'll probably have something tomorrow for the pregame. We may end up going live or something like that. Y'all let us know what times y'all can I guess watch if we do go live. It probably wouldn't be too late because that game is late. We might do it somewhere around 7:30 ish, and we'll probably post something and just take a poll just with what times work best for everybody because we want y'all to be involved with what we're doing on this channel. Y'all already know that. But thank you as always for staying all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all tomorrow. Thanks. Peace.